r/askreddit. What's the most paranormal thing that has ever happened to you? I was once in a class around 4th grade. This girl in a white dress appeared somewhere in the classroom. I observed paralyzed and she disappeared. I thought it was my imagination, but the guy next to me asked me, "Did you see that too?" Still freaks me out. Pardon my spelling. Maybe you imagined the guy next to you too? 4th. Long story short, multiple people who are not friends with one another have been in my house and seen a woman in a blue dress and then told me about it later. I don't tell anyone else about it, not even my husband, because it doesn't bother anything. No big deal, right? Anywho, I myself have seen her twice. The first time I woke up in the middle of the night and saw her leaning over the baby's crib. I immediately sat up and she just faded away. I felt crazy because I didn't know anyone else had seen her at the time. The next day I went to Walmart and some lady walks by me and says, "She likes the baby." I stop and ask what she said and she says, "The woman in your house. She likes the baby." Low-key peed my pants and ran home. What a creepy ass lady. The woman in your house. She likes the baby. Mate, that's when you drop everything and interrogate the lady on how she knows about your baby, the lady or your house. I used to work at a haunted hotel at the front desk. There was a room behind the front desk where you could sit when it was late and no one was in the lobby. There was a TV with the security cameras, including one on the front desk, so you could see if anyone was out there. You could see the whole front desk, including the classic bell that people ring for service. A co-worker and I were sitting in the back room. No one up front, and the bell rang. No one was out there. Over the next hour the bell rang 6 or 7 times, but only when we were in the back. I don't believe in ghosts, but fuck. This was a nice 4-diamond old hotel that had huge ballrooms and dining rooms that I had to walk through late at night when I was alone. When I worked overnights after that as the only employee in the hotel, I would get freaked out, but never really saw anything else supernatural. A nice 4-diamond old hotel that had huge ballrooms and dining rooms. If it was the Sedgwick Hotel, I guess nobody told you about the 12th floor, huh? Was your hotel in a mountain resort? Are you a writer who need a remote job to finish his book? Are you Jack Nicholson? When my son was about 3.5 years old, we were driving home at night with him and his 7-year-old brother in the back seat. As we approached an area of the road across from my older son's former babysitter's house, my younger son clearly blurted out the name Ashley. Ashley was the name of the babysitter and she had died the year before in a car accident. My younger son had never met her and neither son knew that she lived nearby because she always drove to our home to babysit. When I asked my younger son what he said, he repeated the name Ashley, and when I asked him why he said that, he said Raven told him to. Raven was his favorite stuffed animal. My wife and I were stunned and cannot explain what happened. My youngest has done similar, at around 3 years old, driving by an old people's home. No way he knew what it was. He asked, "Is that heaven?" When asked why, he thought that he just said because a lot of people have died there. Just to maybe ease your mind with a possible explanation, kids pick up loads of shit all the time. They don't get enough credit for what they pick up, what they associate with what, etc. etc. It's highly possible your child just linked the house with the name from an earlier conversation you and your other child had. Maybe not on a conscious level, but subconsciously, and either through your reaction or because of his imagination, decided to blame Raven for saying a possible bad thing. Because your reaction would not be normal to something you already perceived to not be normal, and thus think the whole situation is paranormal. A lady's voice coming from my closet. The door was slightly opened and I heard a voice say, "Help me. I see you through the crack." I was scared shitless, but I also was curious and wanting to help, so I opened the door and no one was there. I'll never forget this. It still gives me goosebumps talking about it. You opened it? Bro. She didn't mean the crack in the door. She was also not in your closet. She was taking copious amounts of crack and opened up her brain power to the universe and communicated with you from the other side of the world. Just basic science, really. This is no joke, even though it sounds like it, but when I was about 19 I was fucking this chick at my parents' house and a baseball mitt flew off the dresser across the room and hit us. I seriously think it was someone telling us to stop. I still came though. I still came though. Thanks for that, you would have held us all in suspense. I work nights at a hotel. I was setting up coffee one morning a few years back, and I see someone very tall in the kitchen. We make eye contact. Dude's wearing an olive green jacket and a pair of jeans. After a second, he lifts his legs at the knees and floats out the door. Now, if I were just seeing things, I'd have panicked. I've hallucinated from exhaustion, and the shit I see scares me. This was there. This was real. It must be a guest or something in an employee area. This has happened a couple times. I take off running to catch this guy and tell him he is not permitted back there. No one is there, because of course not. The back is empty. I am alone. I was still convinced for several minutes that this guy was just hiding from me and he'd have to come out and I'd be able to talk to him. Almost a full 5 minutes elapsed before I realized I was literally chasing a ghost. First night in my first apartment. Didn't have a bed, so I slept on the couch in the living room. Had a nightmare that someone with a knife was going down the hallway. Just as they got to the living room door, I woke up. I jumped in my car, spent one more night at my parents'. 2 months later, my roommate falls asleep on the same couch. Next morning he tells me about a dream he had about a guy coming down the hall with a knife. Just as he got to the door, my roommate woke up. A few months later a friend asks if he can crash for a night. Sure, he can sleep on the couch. Next morning he says he had a weird dream. I said, guy coming down the hall with a knife. My roommate added, you woke up just as he got to the door. Dude went palest shade of white I ever seen. Couch was the only witness to a murder. The guy got away with it. To this day the couch has been trying to get justice for the victim the only way it knows how. OMG haunted couch. Creepy. Can I sleep on your couch? You should do couch surfing and get more people experience it. I've had many experiences since I was a kid. The one that freaked me out the most though actually happened a few months ago. I'm only 16. I don't like sleeping in my room, so I sleep on the couch in the living room. My choice, and it's actually really comfy. I also suffer from insomnia and have trouble staying asleep. This being said, I'm normally awake when my dad gets up for work at 4 in the morning and will wish him a good day at work and such. I was trying to sleep but I woke up. Having gone through this many times, I just kept my eyes shut. Then I felt something that felt like a leg lean against the side of the couch and hover over me, and then I heard heavy and low breathing. It was so loud and sounded like a man, so I naturally assumed it was my dad. Since I thought he was trying to check if Jay was awake, I whipped around to try and to scare him, but nothing was there. I was so confused that I kinda just sat there for a few moments thinking about what just happened. This sounds like an early stage of sleep paralysis, but I'm in no way a certified doctor, so take it with a grain of salt. My mother passed when I was 22. It was an accident and a shock. My husband and I went 3 states away to stay at her house for a bit to pack things up and settle her estate. I have always had really bad problems with my sinuses. Well, the stress and everything got me sick and I had a horrible sinus infection. I had medicine and I was on the couch crying after looking everywhere for it. My husband was sitting next to me holding me. Then we looked over on the table where the Bible was opened and the meds were sitting on the Bible. The Bible had been there earlier, closed. I remember sitting it there myself. My husband started freaking out because on the page it was open to a verse was underlined. It was the only one in the whole book underlined. It said, "And the grieving shall be comforted." I usually would not put any credence in this. I was sick and a mess. My husband was not. He is a very level-headed person when it comes to things like this. Also, quite a few other things happened for a while after that. I like to think my mother was trying to help me cope. I really hope she finally found peace. I did. I was working counter late at night at Tim Hortons. I heard an older lady set down her china mug and say "Thanks dear." Turned around and there was no one in the store. I'm okay with a regular dead customer having one last cup. Was the cup there? Did it still have dregs of coffee in it? I'm convinced the house I lived in during my freshman year of college was haunted. I also swear that all of this is 100% true. I don't talk about it because it sounds ridiculous, but it happened and I can't explain it. The house was 120 years old. My room had a door to the attic that I kept locked. I had 4 other roommates who all swear they weren't fucking with me. I was laying in bed one day and I heard a super loud crash behind the door of the attic. I grabbed my big male roommate and we opened the door together. At the bottom of the steps, there were 6 awkwardly shallow steps leading up to a bunch of that pink foam stuff, and your typical attic, there was an old painting of some lady. We were creeped the fuck out. Nobody had ever seen the painting before, let alone gone into the creepy attic. We put the painting in the corner of the attic where it could not fall and didn't think about it again. A few months later I heard the same crash. I figured I dreamed or imagined it. Again, I opened the door and found the painting sitting there. This time I moved the painting into the basement. There were some shelves and I just threw it in the back of the top shelf. A couple more months went by. Yet again, late one night, I heard the crash from behind the attic door. I thought to myself, no fucking way. Grabbed my roommate again and opened the door. There it fucking was. That goddamn painting was sitting at the bottom of the steps again. I don't understand how. I kept the door to my room locked as well as the door to the attic. My roommates couldn't have gotten in there to play a prank. I truly don't understand it. After the 3rd time we took the painting out to the fire pit and burned it. Thankfully, all the creepy shit stopped there. I moved the fuck out of that house as soon as the lease was up. I can't explain what happened, I just know it was creepy as hell and you could not convince me to go back there. It was your ancestor's painting, and it was priceless. She was just trying to draw attention to it. When I was a child I would have sleep paralysis constantly. Every single time I would see a tall shadowy man at the side of my bed. He would talk to me and tell me things that would happen the next day. He was always correct, even if they were awful things. At one point, he told me he was the devil, yet I shouldn't be scared of him. Nights after that he got more distorted and horrifying. The last night I saw him he told me I wouldn't wake up if I ever saw him again. Being 7 years old, I was horrified. I ended up not sleeping and since that day, I haven't slept a full night. I'm still scared to this day, but I'm still alive, so yeah. I have been saved from death 8 times by a spirit guy wearing a bowler hat. Each time has been different, but I am not the only one who has seen him. He has woken up my father and told him to check the garage. My father found me seizing and choking. I fell asleep while driving. He turned the car sharply before we went off into a river. He also shook me awake before my 2 friends in the back seat both asked who I had picked up. Those are the 2 times others have seen him. In some religions and beliefs, it's a spirit guide or guardian for you. It could be an ancestor or other spirit. Freaky if true. At my sister's old apartment you could see into the kitchen from the living room. The kitchen cabinets would open and close and her dog would immediately start to bark. One night we were watching a movie and we heard something stumble and hit the ground in her kitchen and the dog didn't even seem to care. I'm pretty sure we heard a ghost trip and eat shit on her kitchen floor. I used to have cool stories about a banshee screaming in my ear and a ghost crawling in bed with me. But now I know they were just sleep paralysis. I've never experienced a banshee but have always had the shadow people and hat man in my sleep paralysis. They don't scream but will blow in my ear. It honestly gets annoying after 10 plus years. My house used to be the largest on the lot before our town expanded. It was the largest because it was a funeral home. They sealed off the room with plaster walls where they would prepare the bodies though. Underneath the carpet in my parents' room is a hatch too. I've seen plenty of things, heard plenty of things and friends or family have said things I have seen. We have a spirit, ghost, whichever you wanna call it that lives here named Abigail. But she's a trickster. She likes to hide things, move things, open doors sometimes or tease our dogs. Whenever my aunt comes to visit with her family small items tend to go missing. Items like her toothbrush that she set by the sink 2 minutes ago. The things here, and there are a few, aren't as active anymore. Or maybe I don't see them or notice them much. I always had a connection with my grandma. When I was a little kid there were a couple of times when I'd run to my mom all excited that my grandma was visiting. My mom knew grandma wasn't visiting because she always called first, but then she'd roll into the driveway a few minutes later. Once as an adult I got a strong feeling I should go see her. It was late, but she usually stayed up late. When I got there I told her I had a feeling I should visit, and she admitted that she'd had some trouble with a tenant at one of her rentals who threatened her and she'd had a bad feeling that night too. When she passed she'd been in hospice for a couple of weeks, but there was no sign that the end was near. It was the middle of the night, and I had a dream where I was in her room and she suddenly sat up and smiled. She told me that it was okay, and she wasn't in pain anymore and was going to a better place, then walked out the door. A few minutes later my wife woke me up and told me we just got the call that she'd just passed. I'm pretty skeptical and I know there are rational and mundane explanations for all these things. No need to point them out to me. There's a part of me that still hopes there's something more, and takes comfort from these experiences. Quick edit, since this is sadly necessary these days. I do not give my permission to anyone to reproduce this comment on their blog, YouTube channel, podcast, or wherever else. So stop asking. Dog kept barking up the stairs, wouldn't go near them. Tried taking her up there but she just ran to her crate, then felt a cold chill run through my body, never experienced it again. The most paranormal thing to happen to me is probably the least paranormal thing to happen in this thread, lol. But the fact that it's such a small incident is what gets under my skin. I was babysitting my ex's niece when I was still with him, at their family home. His sister went out with friends that night and my ex was working, so I was alone with baby and my ex's youngest sister who was only 2 or so years younger than me. They live out of the city on a dirt road so they had a bunch of land. Their kitchen had large, beautiful windows that almost went from floor to ceiling and you could see over the land where the horses were and some planes and stuff. During the day it was very serene looking out the window because there was no neighbors, nothing you could see more miles except serene tranquility. This setting changed at night. I was completely terrified of what all of this vast nothingness looked like during dark. I couldn't see anything out there, but something could look in and see me. I distinctly remember getting a chill up my spine once the sun had set and shutting the curtains end to end that night I was babysitting. Once it got later in the evening and I was failing miserably at playing Morrowind on a terrible $300 ThinkPad laptop, I was not smart. I went into the kitchen to get a drink because it was time to take my meds. As soon as I stepped into the kitchen, I saw that the curtains were wide open. Not just a little bit, but end to end open. I've got ADHD, but I would not have left those fucking curtains open because their property genuinely scared the shit out of me at night. The baby was asleep, and my ex's sister didn't leave my sight all night either, so no one would have opened those curtains. It haunts me, dude. Fuck. I think about it and get all woozy. I try to be rational but I still just can't explain it. 3 times in my life I saw everything around me freeze all at once, but only for half a second each. It's weird, but by the 3rd time I knew I wasn't seeing things. I just knew something was up. The logical explanation is that this is a problem with your perception, not the world around you. I've told this story several times. Long story short, we knew we had a ghost kid at the house. After a few drinks I decided to taunt him by laying a beer bottle on its side and saying, "Timmy, if you're really here, spin the bottle." A few seconds go by and nothing happens. Then every door in the house slammed open. The front door HSD he deadbolt on. Lol, Timmy didn't want to play spin the bottle with your ugly asses so he ran away. I grew up in a haunted house. It's never scary though, just a bit unnerving sometimes when you realize what is going on. Firstly, my house isn't some old colonial with an estranged who husband returned home after the War of 1812 and slaughtered his family, or any of that nonsense. It was built in 1992. People always ask if my house is super old when they hear it's haunted. I really don't understand why people think houses have had to have deaths, or be old to be haunted. Like, why the fuck is that a thing? Like we know why ghosts exist. I have my own theories. Now, I could give you all sorts of stories as to what I've seen. But it's typical shit. Voices, people talking when no one is home and the TVs are off, seeing actual physical ghosts, etc. But instead I'll give you my 2 most solid pieces of evidence as to why I know it is real. First piece, summer of 2004. Me and my buddy are jamming in my room. House is empty. This was before everyone had a cell phone, so he asked for our phone to call his girlfriend. I tell him to go to the back bedroom, my little brother's, and use his. About 30 seconds later he comes back nonchalant. We jam out a bit more and go for a smoke. As we are smoking I ask him if he got through to his girlfriend. I think she was coming to pick us up. He says nah, your brother's friend was in there and I didn't want to make it all awkward. I ask what the fuck he is talking about. He tells me there was some girl sitting on my brother's bed facing the wall. I didn't bother telling him what he really saw until later, as not to freak him out. Then about 2 years ago I decide to ask my brother about any paranormal shit in the house. Now this is without me ever saying a peep to him about my own experiences. For reference, the most common occurrence was a little girl, in the back room, looking away from you, during the afternoon. And the conversation basically went. Me, have you seen any ghost shit in our house before? Him, oh yeah, it's never scary though. Me, what do you see? Him, mostly a girl. Me, describe her. Him, I have honestly never seen her face, she is always turned away. Me, where did you see her? Him, in my old room, only during the day. Something about that just chilled me, him describing it exactly as I have seen it. A week ago actually my mom admitted to me that it is. She is one of the most skeptical people I have met. I was in her kitchen in the early morning, she suddenly stops what she is doing, turns off the radio and asks if I hear noises upstairs. I jokingly say it's the ghosts. I used to freak out all the time as a child about it to her. She just looks at me and says it's never really scary though. We sat around for a moment listening to the bangs, and finished eating breakfast. Honestly, what I wonder the most is why the first thing we all say is that it isn't scary. I was in a classroom alone late at night and a guitar in the corner seemingly plucked a string on its own. I left immediately. I went back the next night, it was finals week, and as I was leaving, I heard 4 loud steps coming down the stairs I was just on. I waited for a minute to see if anyone would come. Nobody did. I did not return at night for a while. Not trying to discredit your story, just offering a possible explanation if you want it. Guitar strings sometimes shift with changing temperatures which could sound exactly like it being plucked. So it could have just been the string shrinking as the air got colder around the ghost. I'm a big skeptic about this stuff but I have one incident that I cannot explain. Normal weekday night, lying on the sofa watching whatever with the dog next to me. Next thing my DVD player kind of slides forward and tips over the edge of the shelf it was on. It was against the wall. It was a flat surface with no slope or leverage. I jumped up thinking what the fuck but soon forget and carry on watching TV. Maybe 5-10 minutes later the dog jumps down off the sofa and goes to the corner of the room and starts staring at the ceiling just above the DVD player. He is a very responsive dog normally and I only have to say his name once and he comes running. For the next 20-30 minutes he would not even turn around to look at me. I called his name over and over and nothing from him at all. He was in a strange trance the whole time and even me patting him or getting a treat wouldn't snap him out of it. I started freaking out and actually filmed him for the last few minutes before he snapped out of it and came back to the sofa. I thought it may have been some insect's nest or a spider or something but any dog owner expert can only guess what it was. It will bother me until the end of time. Edit. If you want to see the tape, you're gonna be gutted. It was filmed on a phone I had years ago. I lost the vid many moons ago. I gave you all a upvote though.